Wow, thanks for keeping me in the loop. I just show up and do what I'm told.
I compared him to just some sort of wrong-headed Will Ferrell with that punchable face.
I have been very hesitant about this part of this podcast because I did not like this movie.
Well, the big trick this week might be figuring out if there's 2 people on this podcast or 3. It should be fun as we move away from the libraries and into the family room. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we're from MaddWolf.com, and yeah, we made a trip to the library last week. Very informative. We learned things about libraries themselves, and we learned about a lot of horror movies in libraries because we talked with Jennifer from reallibrarians.com. And we're going to have her on again because she was great, and later we're going to dive into librarians specifically in horror. Last time it was just library moments, but it was a lot of fun, and we got a lot of feedback. People love libraries and librarians.
They do, and they ought to, because as we pointed out on the podcast, they are our modern-day superheroes. And also, we have a lot of librarians who are part of the Fright Club pack. So.
And we learned that we can talk in the library. It's all right.
You know what? You probably would still get shushed.
All right. Point taken.
But because she's a librarian, and that makes her very thorough and good with research and knows what she's talking about, she had the most to say about what we didn't talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So let's just run down this list of
Hit it.
What Jennifer had to point out that we didn't actually cover and we should have.
Hey, let's call it Jennifer's Greatest Hits.
The Seventh Victim, Shadow of a Doubt, Curse of the Demon, The Monster That Challenged the World. I don't even know that movie. Quartermass in the Pit, The Night Strangler, Scream Blackula Scream. How did I forget that?
Man, I don't know.
How did I leave that off?
That's on you. Demerits.
That's right. Amityville 2, The Possession, Transylvania Twist, Scream 3, Killer Movie, Truth or Dare, The Changeling, Abandon, and The Forgotten.
Yeah, she has got a list. And really, check out her website. Very thorough. Real-librarians.com.
R-E-E-L.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to get back with her in a few weeks. Glad we had her on. And thank you for all the feedback. Did we get anybody that had any that we were angry that we missed?
No, I mean, if they had, she obviously would have covered with that group. But I think Katie and Brandon in particular, who are our resident librarians, they were particularly happy to hear it.
All right, good. So we will revisit that down the line. But today, effed up families. Right. And there's a good reason for this subject, right? Especially this week, as we tape this, 3 days away from a big moment in our family.
That's right. It's our son's birthday. March is our son's month. It's his birthday, and we decided that we would have him on. And I thought about some different possible things that we could cover. He's a musician, so we thought maybe we would do something there. And then I just thought, let's just do super messed up families. Not that we are one.
No. So let's welcome in Donovan, straight from L.A., Donovan, and he sounds just a little bit like me. Welcome.
I don't sound anything like you.
Okay, fine.
This is going to get confusing at all.
Well, this should be fun because you've got a few ideas of your own. I mean, we've got a top 6, right, that you've figured, but you have a ton that you thought about, and Donovan, you have some as well. So this should be fun to get into. And then once we get to the top 6, you've seen all but one of them, correct?
All but one. I couldn't find one, but I hunted down. I just sort of slammed them in the last couple days.
Binge watching. All right, fun. So before we get to our top 6 effed up, man, what were some of the ones that you considered? Just scanning this list, it's a good one.
It is, and one of the first things that I had to do, because, I mean, there are thousands and thousands of horror movies that are focused on screwed up family members, so I had to, create some rules so that we could prune some stuff. So one of the things that we looked at was a whole family. The whole family is in one way or another nut, so it's not just, one madman spoiling it for everybody, like The Shining or Amityville Horror, things like that. And then there has to be some size to the family, which is to say it can't just be a couple of siblings, because we've done that. We've done twins. We've done mothers and daughters. We will be doing fathers and daughters soon, so we're looking for a larger group.
Well, see, right there, we don't qualify. There's only 3 of us. We're out.
That's right. And then some of the ones even that would still fit this bill that were good and you should all watch anyway, but weren't quite good enough to make this list. One of our all-time favorites, Frailty.
Oh, yes.
That's a good one. Good Night, Mommy. That's a great one. You're Next. That's a screwed up family. The Brood. Oh, my God.
That puts the F in effed up. The Brood does.
What about Eraserhead?
Okay. 2 Fs.
Bad Boy Bubby. Rosemary's Baby. The Shining. The Witch. Hellraiser. People Under the Stairs, Shaitan. I really wanted to include that one, and you know I wanted to include the next one.
The Loved Ones.
I did.
Of course. You'll put that on every list. The Loved Ones. Those are all good.
They are.
And especially, I thought about, when we first brought this up, I thought, well, The Witch will be on there, but we have talked about that a lot, and that's fine. That family's pretty effed.
Yeah.
And that goat just makes it even worse. So that's a bunch that we considered, and Donovan, you've got your own. What are you thinking?
I had, my list is obviously not going to be as thorough. The three that I had thought, House of a Thousand Corpses, it's on in the house constantly. I've seen it like 15 times. And also, like, as a white zombie fan, it just kind of feels like they took a white zombie video and stretched it all the way out.
That is why it feels like very tiresome to me. But the Fireflies, they're a very interesting and very screwed up family.
Yes. And so I liked that a lot. And then I guess more recently, Parasite to me feels like a pretty clear example. And especially they do the fun game of, like, at any point in the movie, which family you think is the screwed up one may be different.
Right.
They kind of take on a whole arc of who's really the villain in what we're doing here.
That's one of the genius things about that movie is the shifting, your shifting perspective when you think you have it figured out and then you don't.
Yeah. You don't know what team you're supposed to be on and who's sympathetic. And then to me, the scariest of the families that I could think of was the Get Out family. Because it's so up in that way that, like, excessive passive aggressive politeness can just suffocate you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the way they do that because they didn't go for sort of the more typical, the family's terrifying rate. They went for all the we're like, oh God, that's so much scarier.
Yeah.
Why won't she stop with that teacup or whatever? So yeah, those were the three big ones I could think of where the families are profoundly upsetting.
Oh yeah, Get Out for sure.
Oh yeah, it's so great. And like you say, I mean, one of the reasons why it's so great is that they feel so like people you kind of know. You know, you don't get to know them well because they're rich, but you know of them and you would never think. And then you're like, oh no, sure, of course, they are this horrible.
Absolutely. This is a nightmare.
Those are all good, but didn't quite crack our top 6, top 5.
Yes.
So you want to dive into this? And this is perfect to start out with because it was actually, not today, it was yesterday, International Women's Day. And by the way, that was the fright of the day on the Fright Club Podcast Facebook group. So this is my obligatory moment to tell you to join. If you're not a member of the Fright Club Podcast group, we'd love to have you. Just check it out on Facebook and send a request, and I will give you a lightning quick approval, unless you're some kind of psycho, and then it'll be even quicker.
Yeah, get him in there.
Fright Club Podcast group on Facebook. All right, so at number 6, it's a successful country lawyer capturing and attempting to civilize the last remaining member of a violent clan that has roamed the northeast coast for decades. He puts the lives of his family in jeopardy. From 2011, it's The Woman.
This is our project, and it's a secret.
What are we gonna do with her?
We're gonna help her. We're gonna train her, civilize her, free her from herself, from her baser instincts.
Do you really think we should be doing this? Do we really get to keep her?
We do.
Yes, I was so This arguably was the one I had the most fun watching. I mean, fun is a what I'm saying, a loose term.
Yeah.
However you'd want to. I liked this one so much, and there were so many things about it. The dad's creepy Will Ferrell energy was so upsetting. He has like that same whimsical, like there's a melody to everything he says, and it makes him so horrifying. And then the other thing, I left it and I was being like, you know who I bet loves this movie? Emerald Fennell. I bet Emerald Fennell would really, I'm sure she's seen it. I bet this seems like her jam. This saw a lot of her vibe in that.
Yeah, she's the writer-director, of course, from Promising Young Woman that we love so much. And I
Which
think
is a masterpiece of a movie.
Yeah, and I think you're right on about the dad, Chris Cleek, played by Sean Bridgers. Such subversive humor to it, especially with the family, in that family unit, before they even get to and interact with the woman, of course, played by Pollyanna McIntosh.
And it's funny that you say Will Ferrell, because I remember when I reviewed this movie when it came out in 2011, and that's exactly what I compared him to, just some sort of wrong-headed Will Ferrell with that punchable face.
Oh,
Yeah, he does.
oh, and the small town likability that he's kind of cramming into these horrifying decisions. And then there's so many, that guy does such a good job of like doing something terrible and then immediately being like, well, let's watch TV. Like, what are you even talking about?
Right. And this is writer-director Lucky McKee, and it's been a favorite of ours for years. And I always think back to when we did the feminist horror, and we had our friend Melissa on, and this was on our list. And for a lot of people, you might not think so, but then dig deeper and you find, oh yes, there are lots of feminist qualities here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it does really effectively is to upend the idea of patriarchy.
Yes.
And I think that it's, if you don't, because it would be an easy film not to make it all the way through. It's very grim. And if you don't make it all the way through, then it just feels like torture porn at the expense of a female character. But if you pay any attention to that female character, she's clearly going to kill some people and probably eat them alive.
Oh, yeah.
And since we're focusing on effed up families, you just get the feeling that had it not been for this particular woman and then they captured her, something was going to set them off. I mean, I don't want to spoil too much about what's going on out in the barn, but they are really messed up, and the movie is able to, as you point out, Donovan, in a subversively funny, cold black humor way, just point out the facades in these straight upstanding families in suburbia.
Oh yeah, the cookies. It's the cookie scene, I think, is what does that the best. Between the mom, Angela Bettis, always sublime, and little Darlin, who's going to go on and get her own sequel at some point. I think that the way that they set up that sort of country mouse family, wholesome family is just perfectly done.
Exactly, and that is number 6 on our list of effed up families from 2011, The Woman. Moving into the top 5, one that we've talked about many, 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 many times, but that's all right because it deserves it. 2 siblings and 3 of their friends en route to visit their grandfather's grave in Texas fall victim to a family of cannibalistic psychopaths from 1974, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I love it so much. And I like that for this podcast, we get to just focus on the family, who doesn't actually have a last name in this first one. They go on to be called the Sawyers through most of the rest of the franchise, though not all of them. It's the hitchhiker, Leatherface, of course, and the cook, and then, of course, Grandpa. And that's what I think one of I think is the best, most difficult scenes to get through in this movie is the dinner scene, where they just really want to see Grandpa knock this woman's head in with just for one last time, for old time's sakes. Come on, Grandpa. And then, the way Tobe Hooper films it, these close up on her eyeball, is she's just like, it's almost like, it's like us. We're taking this in like, is this really happening? Can I possibly, what is wrong with this family? And the thing is that the rest of the film I don't think is humorous. I think there are moments. I think this particular scene could be taken very comedically. But it's so grisly that it's hard to see that. But I really feel like, this scene, the scene at the dinner table, gives you such a weird family dynamic. The way they bitch at each other and bicker, and the way they use this person to sort of explain to the audience what their position is in the family. I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah, I think if there's any scene that is comedic, it could be this one. And some of it for me is the fact that Grandpa reminds me of Monty Burns from The Simpsons when he's just not strong enough to lift anything. They want him to beat her, and he just can't do it.
And yeah, I was super interested in, like, they pump up the dude's skills so much, and then he's so feeble. I'm like, so what's 35-year-old Grandpa doing? What's the thing that made y'all talk about him like this? The blood in the finger scene, right? My brain kept being like, this scene feels like if Satan rewrote the last scene from The Grapes of Wrath.
Wow.
That's strong. That's a strong metaphor, analogy. Nice.
And of course, as we know, they really did cut her finger.
Right.
Oh, nice.
She didn't know they were going to, and they just did it.
That's not cool. Oh, that's not cool.
Yeah, and I guess she got a lot of cuts when she was running through the woods out there and through all the branches and things. She got a lot of cuts and bruises, so she suffered for the art. But boy, it worked out. And every time we talk about this movie, I always bring up my most frightening scene is the slamming of that door. But you know what? It kind of works. Yeah. It works in a familiar sense too, because then it signifies what's going on behind that door, because boom, it smashes, it slams with such a finality that you're out there and all this family craziness is in here. So that's one of my favorite scenes really in horror. To the bone, it's just tremendously frightening.
It is, and it speaks to how great the sound design is in that movie.
Right.
It's, for an outdoor film, broad daylight, the sound of the chainsaw, the body going on the hook. The sound design in this movie is glorious.
Yeah. The one other thing that I really appreciated about it is I often feel like the classic slasher villains like Michael Myers or like Jason are not that interesting as people. They're just like large masses that don't make noise. And it's like they more represent fear than are. This dude with the animal noises and then that he comes in with the makeup on the thing with I was like, they made a character out of this guy. They didn't just go big, scary. Also, because I was watching this with my roommates, the vision to pick that short sleeve button-up shirt for him. Like, to just know that that's what he needed. Incredible.
Yeah, and that you create a backstory without a backstory, because then you just know, good God, that just brings the effed up of this family into that, because look how he is now. How did he get that way? And we don't need an origin story, as you've pointed out many times with these killers. We don't need it. It's even more frightening when we don't know. We just know it was bad.
Yes.
And that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, number 5 from 1974. We'll get a lot more recent on the next one, moving up to number 4 in effed up families. This is from 2019. A soon-to-be stepmom is snowed in with her fiancé's 2 children at a remote holiday village. Just as relations begin to thaw between the trio, some strange and frightening events take place. It's the lodge.
How would you feel about going to the mountains for Christmas with Grace? She really wants to get to know you guys. You okay? I don't want to leave you here with the kids if you're not feeling up to it.
I'm feeling fine. It was my idea, and it's a couple days. I can do a couple days.
What is that?
It's Grace.
Everyone committed suicide except for her.
Repent, and you will find salvation.
Guys! Things are very uncomfortable between us, and we're stuck in a house together. What is this? The power's out. Where are my things? It makes no sense. What? I heard something.
Repent. Repent your sins.
We were lucky enough to see this one early at the Nightmares Film Festival that year. Loved it, and it's great for effed up families because right away my first thought goes to that dad. He's an ass.
Yeah, he's a complete dumbass. And this is from the same people, Severin Fiala and Veronica Franz, who did
Good Night Mommy.
So they're frightened of children, and they put up a good case for it. They really do. This is such an incredibly well put together film, and Riley Keough plays Grace, plays a soon to be stepmother, and she has her own very screwed up family background that they just sort of tease. They don't really explore, but right from the Thanksgiving feast, where the dad lets the kids know that they're all going to go spend a snowy weekend with the woman who ended their parents' marriage. The Thanksgiving meal, the decorations, it's outdoors. They've got like turkey lights hanging. It's the screwiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's a great cast. You mentioned Riley Keough, and then Jaden Martell, who we always love, is the son, the oldest of the kids. Alicia Silverstone, actually, now she's the ex-wife, and she's got an important but smaller part, but it's so fascinating that right away, you mentioned that scene, right away in the early interactions, Riley Keough's character, Grace, is just she's so passionless. She just has no emotion whatsoever. And you think, okay, the dad, Richard, played by Richard Armitage, just thinks they're going to bond. They're going to bond while he just takes off and they get snowed in. What gave him that idea?
Because we don't want to give away too much of the film, but it's more than just a divorce that is going to keep these kids from liking this woman, and that he just leaves them all alone in a frozen, isolated cabin. People who like each other don't get along. Has he never seen a horror film? Yeah, he is the biggest dumbass of a dad ever. But it turns out that the kids are quite screwed up as well. And then, of course, Grace, as we knew it would come about, she's not right either because she's had some bad family upbringing. And the whole thing together comes to a boil in a way that was such a gut punch. I was very impressed by where the film took you.
some people don't like those, don't appreciate those gut punches to have at the end of a movie. But boy, that can be just, to me, and I know to you, I don't know about you, Donovan, that can be just as effective as some happy ending. A lot of times even more so.
Especially in this genre.
Yeah, I definitely have a tendency as a viewer to resent the decision to go with the happy ending, especially if it seems clear that, like, you guys were just too cowardly to do the real one. Come on.
Totally agreed.
I tried really hard to hunt this one down, and I clearly just need to spend a little bit more time trying because it sounds fantastic. Everything I saw about it was great, but this is the one I wasn't able to watch by this.
Yeah, definitely worth it if you can find it. Should be able to somewhere, I think. It's only a couple years old.
I'm bad at finding things. I'm sure I can.
From 2019, that is The Lodge, number 4. And moving up to number 3 on Effed Up Families. When the patriarch of this family passes away, the teenage children must take responsibility for the family chores, the preparation of the rituals, the hunting, and the putting of the all-important meat on the table. Hint, hint, hint. From 2010, we are what we are.
Yo no te tengo miedo. Deberías.
So we really could do either one, the Spanish language original or the American remake, the Jim Mickle remake, which is really very good. It's very good. And I didn't want to see it because I love the original so much. And I think that he did a great job with reworking it to sort of entrench it in American folklore. But this one, the original, is Jorge Michael Grau's Mexican film, is about really just disposable populations in Mexico City. And it's just absolutely brilliant because you start with this family and it's almost as if the rest of the world has evolved around it. And they never abandon that kind of primitive hunter, gatherer sort of a culture that is entirely their own. And so when the father dies, they have to figure out what they're going to do. And there are parts of it that's almost Shakespearean in the way that the brothers and sisters are like eyeballing each other and sort of, making teams and reteaming to determine who does get to be the leader, which also means that they have to do something they don't want to do. The dynamic inside the family is fascinating. And then also the context that they situate this in is fascinating. And then what happens when they try to take things over and the comeuppance that they face. Everything about this movie was so unique, was so unexpected, and was so perfectly executed. I just love it.
Yeah, and Grau said his intention was to make a film about family disintegration, but it just happened to be a horror movie about cannibals. And I think it very clearly works on both levels. And I'm glad you mentioned when the children have to fight for who's the alpha, because I love the scene when you find out who is the alpha. And after that scene, there's no discussion. We know.
I have been very hesitant about this part of this podcast because I did not like this movie.
Ooh.
And so I watched it, and then I was like, oh, God, I'm going to have to say I didn't like it, and then listen to them explain to me why I was too stupid to catch what I was. Not that you would put it that way, but that's how it would be. And so I read like 15 reviews and breakdowns of this movie last night, and I still don't like it.
That's okay.
What don't you like about it? I'd love to know.
The idea that it all functions as this really effective social commentary, I just didn't see. I saw people saying it, but I don't see I didn't see how that was well executed with the narrative. Like, okay, they're getting forgot, but it didn't seem like what it is analogous to. I didn't see how that was painted well for me. And then the power dynamics within the family, I'm like, okay, I clearly see what we're doing, but also I feel like within 5 minutes of meeting all the characters, I can see the actual power structure. You can tell by the way we know how this is going to go. We know who's actually where. The one thing that I like about this movie is I got to get in a joke I was really proud of, which is at one point they hurt Alfredo and he's bloody. And I got to turn to who I was watching it with and go, that's not Alfredo, that's red sauce.
No, that's interesting because we don't often have a contrary opinion like that, but that's fine. I would be interested, just if you ever have time, to seek out the American remake from 2013, just to see if it
remake good. So I skipped it, but if this one is,
yeah, it is good. We don't think it's as good as this one, but since you have negative views on this one, I'd be interested to see if you think the American remake, Jim Mickle, does it any better.
Okay. The one thing I will say, the cast was wonderful. My issue, I thought everybody performed it really, really well. And then the daughter is in Sin Nombre, which I watched a little while ago and was very good in that. And she was wonderful. Everybody in the cast was really, really, really good. The mom was great. Everybody was great in it. So that none of my qualms are there. Everybody performed it wonderfully. Also, the two cops were so funny looking. Like, I wanted to be in the casting room when they just ran through guys and saw those two and were like, yes.
Well, that's interesting. All opinions and all breakdowns appreciated. It's interesting to get because I haven't really run into too many people who feel that way about this movie. Not to say that you're wrong at all.
No,
but I mean,
could tell from the reviews that most people did not, and I was like, I must be missing something. I don't know.
It didn't work for you, so who knows why? But yeah, if you get a chance, check out the American remake and see if it works any better. But that is number 3 on Effed Up Families, the Spanish language original. We Are What We Are. Moving up to number 2, this is another foreign language film. A young woman studying to be a vet develops a craving for human flesh. From 2016, it's Raw.
This is the only one I had actually seen going into this because of a conversation from like a year and a half ago where I had asked what are some of the roughest movies to sit through. And I think in that conversation that got name checked. And so I went into it. This movie is so great on so many levels, but one of the things that keeps sticking with me is the way they use music. In that, there's a lot of where they use weird electronic dance music in scenes where that would not ever have been my instinct, but works so oddly well in unsettling you. And then just the way they unfold the girl's discovery of her own tendencies and how she handles it is so well done and does such a good job of showing you the things instead of beating you over the head with exposition about it.
I remember we had heard, of course, a lot about how gross and barf bags and all that. And I don't think it's that bad at all. I mean, it's no G-rated, family Sunday picnic, but I love the ending. I love the ending so much. To me, it's just perfect and ties a bow on this family comment about not just the girl and not just her tendencies, but the whole family. I love the final scene. I love the look on the dad's face. It's just a chef's kiss for me on that.
Yeah, it is. It's one. I mean, we featured this movie when we did a podcast on sisters, and that makes good sense, right? Yep. Justine goes to college, and the family thinks that her older sister is going to sort of mentor her through and she's not a good influence.
No. No, not thoughtful or reasoned in particular.
No, and one of the things that is great about the movie is that it's just a coming of age. It's just a coming of age tale, and it's just done so perfectly within this metaphor that they use. It's just absolutely brilliant. But like you said, I mean, I think it's great, and we don't want to give anything away. Especially if you haven't seen this movie, you really need to see this movie. It's utterly brilliant. But there's an element once they get to the third act, and you're like, oh wow, okay. Also, shout out to one of our all-time favorites, Laurent Lucas from Calvaire. He's great in this.
And the writer-director here is Julia Ducournau, and we've been waiting. I think every time we talk about this movie, I go, and what is she doing? And we're still waiting. But that's all right, because we know it's going to be good once it gets here. That is Raw, definitely one that we don't want, especially since it's only 5 years old now. We don't want to give anything away, but man, is it worth checking out. And the metaphor works, and the whole comment on the family and these tendencies. And yes, it is a little rough to watch, but definitely worth it.
The only other thing, I was just going to agree with the idea that the final scene really does such an incredible job of it ties a lot of things together in a really satisfying way, but that never seems forced. A lot of times when directors go for that bow ending at the end, it's like, stop it. This doesn't work. You're just trying to get in under a time crunch. And it really, everything comes together exactly the way it's very, very believable and very natural. And that can be hard a lot, I think.
Yeah, it's a bow that doesn't seem like a bow. Very compelling. Once it hits you. Raw from 2016, number 2. Taking us up to number 1, Effed Up Families. Oh, yes, they are here. A grieving family haunted by tragic and disturbing occurrences from 2018, Hereditary.
My mother was a very secretive and private woman.
She isn't gone.
She had private rituals, private friends.
I don't like this. Dad, I don't like this.
What's happening? Enough! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Please stop! Mom, what's happening? Make it stop! Make it stop!
Now, this is one, Donovan, you were saying how you couldn't find negative reviews, negative opinions so much about We Are What We Are. This is one that, especially right after it came out, we found it to be, I guess, more polarizing than we anticipated. We just loved it. But for some people, it did not work at all. And it worked, I've said this before, it worked for me on two levels. It worked on the quote-unquote supernatural level of what's going on with the demons, and it worked as a dysfunctional family drama, too. I think it works both ways beautifully.
I finished this movie like 15 minutes ago. Like, I finished it and then walked in here and started. That movie was insanity. I cannot fathom how people would watch that movie and not love it. I was blown away by every. First of all, Toni Collette is just out here as a flamethrower. Every scene, that woman is just like, she's majestic.
Yes.
It's astonishing. The amount of times that I found myself going, will someone check in on Gabriel Byrne? Will someone take care of this man who is just suffering in silence? That poor guy. And then they did, that movie does such a wonder. I don't know her name. The friend, Toni Collette's friend.
Oh, that's Ann Dowd from Compliance and so many other things. Great character actress.
Yeah, she was so good in a way that before I understood her character, I was like, I would watch the rough scenes 10 times over before I have to watch one more conversation with this lady. When she comes over and keeps Toni Collette in the car and is talking through I was like, this is killing me. Oh, let this woman go. Why are you making her suffering about your suffering, you psychopath?
I'm glad you feel that strongly about it, because when it works for people, it works so deeply like that. It's so effed up. And that's how we feel about it. And again, this is only, how many years old now? Not very, so we don't want to spoil too much. But the effed upness of this family, it's not just this generation. It goes back a ways.
Oh, yeah.
And Ari Aster, the writer-director, who also, of course, did Midsommar, said he wanted to make a film about suffering that took suffering seriously. Well, just from those two movies, he can do suffering, and he can make us see that suffering. But in this case, it's so definitely a horror film as well. I mean, my God, that ending, she's walking on the ceiling.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a meme going on. It's actually just a screenshot. Ari Aster, Ask Me Anything, AMA. The very first comment, you okay? And his response, nope. Yeah, he seems like a troubled soul. And yeah, I feel like a lot of people, I think in both of his films, he doesn't turn the camera away where everybody else does. Like he really just lives in the worst parts of what could possibly happen to somebody. And I think the scene for me that shows that the best is when Alex Wolff wakes up in his bed and he's just laying there and the camera is just on his face. It's just on his face. We hear the mom call for him, hear the mom go outside, hear the mom open the car door. We hear the mom screaming and screaming and screaming. Of course, Toni Collette, absolutely brilliant. It's grief and horror like you can't possibly imagine. That's the sound, and the camera never leaves the boy's face. It's the most stunning piece of film from that entire year, and that everything else about that movie is gorgeous. The shots of the house from the exterior, the shots of the little miniatures that she's making. Why is she making them? What's wrong with her head? What did her mom do to her? I mean, this is maybe the best movie about family dysfunction I've ever seen.
How did they pull off that shot where they pull into the miniature and then it's there? How did they do that?
Yeah, it's so great, and it works on such a great metaphorical level too, because then that shot makes you think, okay, are we inside that? Is someone outside pulling the strings on this family? What's going on here? It's a great shot, I agree with you, and it works so well metaphorically that sets the whole thing up. Yeah, I'm so glad you feel as deeply about this movie as we do.
It was amazing.
We're so proud of you. And
that's good parenting.
That's right. I feel like if we've done anything with this podcast, anybody who's listening is going to go, yes, he sounds just like his dad and he talks just like his mom. This is what I think.
That's essentially what I say if people out here ask about you guys. I'm like her, but with his voice and bone structure.
But you got her height, which is good. Number 1 on our list of effed up families. So great. Hereditary from 2018. And we talked about those 6, and we talked about a bunch that didn't quite make the list. You had some, he had some. So it's good. But if we missed any, by all means, let us know. Easiest way to get a hold of us and keep the conversation going, it's Fright Club Pod on Twitter. Or, one more time, what's that Facebook group?
It's Fright Club Podcast.
Yes, thank you for saying so. And that's where you can find that. Find us, of course, on Instagram, on Facebook. It's MaddWolf Columbus. The main website is MaddWolf.com. Now, Donovan, he's out in L.A. You're doing the music. You're doing the acting, the auditions, the modeling. Where can everybody find you and what you're working on?
It's all going to be at New Plague Radio. At New Plague Radio, either on Instagram or New Plague Radio on YouTube. It's all the same stuff, but that's where everything is going to be centered. And as an awkward attempt to make it seem like it ties in, we just filmed a new music video, and the lyrics is a big Pet Sematary reference.
Nice.
All right.
So yeah. So if if you want to try and hunt that down, we're still trying to keep the horror thing going, even on our end, little by little.
Now, I know your first band video, you directed it. Did you direct this one?
I did, and I did a much better job, so it took way less time. We got to sleep a little bit this time.
I thought you did a darn good job on the first one.
We loved it. The first song, by the way, is called Methamphetamine Dance, and you can find that on Donovan's YouTube channel. And then the other thing that you could do, just real quickly, because you mentioned earlier that you were fascinated by the score in Raw. Donovan has scored both of our short films, and you can see one of them, Godspeed. It's pinned. It's a pinned tweet. And then the other one, he stars in and scores, which you can't see yet, but at some point you can. It's a short film called Obstacle Corpse.
So much going on. Exciting. So look up New Plague Radio, and I dig the tunes.
I'd be bummed otherwise.
All right, so what do we got coming up next time? We are closing in on our 200th episode. We're probably going to do a StreamYard, a live Facebook event for that one. Unless we're back in front of live crowds by then, who knows? But we'll see.
But in between now and then, it's going to be the fun yearly Skeletons in the Closet episode because the Oscar nominations are going to come out. And so we will quickly follow that up with a list of the best bad horror movies that Oscar nominees have made. And then also in the near future, filmmaker and Nightmares Film Festival programmer and founder, Jason Tostovan, is going to join us. We're going to stay with the family kind of tradition, and we're going to talk about fathers and daughters in horror.
Well, see that? You told me you were going to reach out to him. I didn't know he got back to us, so he picked that. Wow, thanks for keeping me in the loop. I just show up and do what I'm told. It's the Fright Club Podcast. Keep in touch if you can. You got a lot of great stuff coming up in the future, as always. Check out Donovan and his band New Plague Radio, and we hope to see it's been nice to see you on Skype.
Yes, this is so lovely.
To make this a regular thing. It only took, how many years have we been doing this now before we got you on the show? It was a lot of fun, and until next time, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast, and he is Donovan MaddWolf Jr. You can do the out.
Stay frightful, my friends.